Hi everyone, welcome to my channel and welcome back. I'm Jeannie, and now that it's springtime, you're going to be seeing a lot of flowers from me because I am obsessed with flowers. So today I'm going to be showing you how I apply dried flower dips. So these two dips that I'm using are from Soul Dips. So I'm going to pair a dried flower dip with a solid. So my solid is Cutie Pie, which is from, I believe, a January trio. So I'm not sure whether or not it'll become available again, so apologies for that. But I am going to pair it with Plantastic, which is this beautiful light green base. So it's got foils in there. So it's got purple, pink, and green foils, as well as dried flowers. So the dried flowers in here are orange, and there's some green ones as well. And dried flower dips can be a little trickier to use, but they are so worth it. They're some of my favorite because they are so pretty. And if you like dried flower dips, check out Soul Dips because she has so many and they're all so beautiful. I'm going to be using dip liquids for my mani today, so of course I'm using some of my favorites. These are the double dipped dip liquids, so I'm using the Dip Base Activator and Dip Top Coat. So jumping right into Plantastic, I apply my dried flower dips the same way I apply my chunky glitters. So for my first layer, I'm going to use my Dipp'd Chaos by Chaos Concepts to pour over. So I'm going to apply a thin, even layer of dip base to my entire nail, and Plantastic is going to go on my index, middle, and ring fingers. So I'm going to do the same process for all three fingers. So once I have a thin, even layer of dip base on my entire nail, I'm going to start pouring out the dip in the Dipp'd Chaos, and then once a little bit has started flowing, I'm going to pour over the rest onto my nail, and then I'm going to tap my finger to get off the excess powder. And you'll see the only thing I caught was that big piece of foil, which is loose. So I'm actually just going to knock it off because I don't really need it in the first layer anyway. I can worry about catching any of the foils or flowers in my second dip. So really the first layer, I'm really only concerned about getting that base powder on my nail. If I catch any flowers or foils, that's fine as well, but just know that it's not a big deal if you don't get any of those on your first layer. So same thing for my middle finger. I'm applying a thin, even layer of dip base to my nail. I start pouring out first just so it doesn't come just like flooding out onto my nail, and if there are any chunky pieces at the top, those will come out first as well. So then I pour over on my nail, and then I don't really catch anything here on my middle finger as well, which is completely fine. If you're curious about the mani on my left hand, this is one I did with some colors I had gotten from All Powdered Up, and I'll leave the video for that up above in the cards. So this has Teal Breaker in it, which is a thermal, which is like a teal to a pinkish white thermal color, and it breaks my heart to take it off. You know, sometimes with manis you just really love that you don't want to take off, so I'm still wearing it. But as a content creator, I know I can't wear a mani for a long time because I need to pop it off and do another set. But this one makes me sad, so unfortunately it won't last much longer because I need to move on to my next mani. But hopefully I can get it off on all in one piece, and I can at least save my peelies from this one. Moving on to my second layer, I'm going to pour the rest of my jar of Plantastic into my Dipp'd Chaos, and this is going to make it easier for me to lay my finger flat into it. So you see me shaking the Dipp'd Chaos and kind of tapping it against the table, and that's going to bring the foils and the dried flowers up to the surface, and that way I can catch more of them when I lay my finger flat into it. So I'm just dusting off the excess powder, and this is the cute duster brush that I got from Marullo Nail Co. So anyway, moving on to my second layer, I'm applying a thin, even layer of dip base to my entire nail. So I'm starting with my index finger, and then I'm going to turn my hand upside down, and I'm going to lay my finger flat directly into that dip powder, and that'll catch most of the foils and flowers that are at the surface of that dip. Now, with floral dips, I haven't found one where I haven't had to do any hand placement, so keep that in mind if you're working with floral dips, that you have to be okay with doing some placement. So you can see here, I did catch some flowers, I did catch some foils, but I didn't catch a lot of them, and I don't want to do a third full layer, so I'll do some hand placement at the end. So you just have to be prepared to do some hand placement because it is so worth it. So I did find that my dip base was still a little bit wet, so I'm just going to dip back into the powder just to absorb more of that dip base. And then I'm just taking my finger. If you don't want to use your finger, you can use a baggie, and I'm just pressing down the flowers and the foils. I'm going to do the same process for my middle finger and ring finger, but just make sure that in between your dipping that you're shaking your jar or cupcake liner or whatever you're using with the dip powder, you're shaking it and bringing all the pieces to the surface, because after you dip in it, they sink again. So you want to make sure you're bringing them to the surface in between your dipping so you get the most amount of flowers or foils in your dip. Now that I'm finished with my 2 dips, I'm going to start hand placing some of the pieces because I want a little bit more coverage, but I don't want to do a 3rd dip. So I'm going to use these tweezers, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to apply a thin, even layer of dip base to my entire nail. If there's only like a couple little spots, you can just apply your dip base there, because I want more coverage over my entire nail, I'm just doing the dip base on my entire nail. So I'm using the tweezers to pick up the pieces that I want, and I'm just kind of placing them on my nail. I don't want them to look too perfect or too uniform, so I'm just kind of placing them randomly on my nail where I feel like it could use a little more of the orange or the pink or whatever color, whether it's a foil or whether it's a flower. So I'm just kind of randomly placing them where I feel like I want the pieces to fall. And my dip base, with my double dipped dip base, I have plenty of time to do the placement without it drying on me. So that's what I like about using the double dipped dip base, is I find it's more of like a medium dry time, so it doesn't dry too fast, but it's not super slow either. So what I found is I'm actually using my non-dominant hand to pick up the pieces, which wasn't working so well. So what I'll change and do for my middle finger, and what I recommend doing, especially if you're using your non-dominant hand, is pre-pick out the pieces. So I picked out some pieces and I put them in the lid of my jar, and that way I could just pick them up with my precision tool instead of having to pick them out with my non-dominant hand, because that was difficult. So see, here's what I'm doing. I'm pre-picking out my pieces, and it'll make it easier to get the pieces and transfer them onto my nail. Now that I separated out some of my pieces and put them in the lid of my jar, that's going to make it easier for me to place them on my nail instead of fishing through the powder when my dip base is wet. So I applied a thin, even layer of dip base to my entire nail, again, because I want more coverage on that nail. And I dip my end of the precision tool into the wet dip base, and then I can pick up a piece in that lid more easily because the wet dip base is going to kind of attract it and pick it up. And so then I will place it on my nail. And again, this is going to be kind of a random pattern of where I feel like I want a little bit more color. You don't have to do as much as I do. You can do less. It's really a matter of personal preference on where you want things to look. And that's actually why I like the floral dips, is it is a little more work to hand place, but it makes it a little more unique because not everyone's mani is going to look the same, even though they're using the same dip. So it's really cool in that way, and it's just so pretty. I would say if you've worked with flower dips before and you were frustrated because you weren't picking up a lot of flowers because they weren't sticking, don't get frustrated. Try hand placing. I feel like because the flowers are heavier, that they don't stick naturally as well, and that's where the hand placement comes into play, because if you hand place them, they will stick. I just feel like they just don't naturally stick because they're heavier, but you can make them look really pretty and work with them. You just have to be able to hand place them. I went ahead and dipped Cutie Pie off camera, so now we're ready to encapsulate and clear. So I just got this new clear in the mail from Double Dipped. This is Glowful, which is a clear but purple glow, and I'm so excited to use this because you know how I feel about purple. So I'm just going to give it a good stir because glow pigments can settle, so it's better to always make sure you give glows a good stir. And I will also mention, if you are interested in any products from Double Dipped, I do have an affiliate code. You can use code Purplicious18 at any time to save 18% off your order. Once I dip my finger into the clear, I actually like to press down with my finger just to make sure that the clear is absorbing into the wet dip base, as well as if there are any chunky glitters or chunky pieces, like we know this one has foils and dried flowers. It helps them lay a little bit flatter as well because that dip base is wet. Personal preference, you don't have to do it, but I always like to press in my clear whenever I'm doing that. So if you're wondering why I'm doing that, that's why. After my first dip in clear, I still felt like my Plantastic nails were a little too bumpy, so I decided to go ahead and do a second layer of clear just so I didn't risk filing through those foils and those pretty flowers. So I'm going to go ahead and do a second dip in clear, and don't worry, my nails won't become too chunky because the double dip base is a little bit thinner, so I don't have to worry about it being too bulky. But I do want to do that second dip and clear just to make sure everything is protected. Once my dip base is fully dry, I'm going to go ahead and give my nails a good scrub with a stiff scrub brush. So this removes any of the excess clear and it helps reduce any graininess or cloudiness that you may or may not experience. I find that the double dipped clears are really good, and it's hard to get a really good clear glow because glow pigments do have a bit of color to them, but I haven't had any issues with the double dipped glow clears. I also really like the Secret Sister ones as well. But anyway, back to my point. Now I'm going in with activation, and I'm doing a similar process that I do for chunky glitters. This is a wonderful hack. So I'm applying a generous amount of activator to my nail, and you can see it's really wet, but I want to wait till it's starting to dry, but not fully dry. So once it becomes a little matte, I will start pressing down. So that's as the activator is drying, as your dip powder is hardening. If you press down, it helps them lay flatter. It works wonderfully for chunky glitter, so I'm doing the same thing for these dried flowers because they are a little bit thicker, and I want to make sure I don't file through them. Now, if you try this when the activator is still wet, it'll become really sticky, so you have to really find that really sweet spot, I guess, of when it's starting to dry, but it's not fully dry, so you're able to lay your pieces down a little bit flatter. I'm using my finger because I'm just being lazy. It works really well if you use a baggie because you can kind of press the baggie down and wrap it around your finger, but I was just too lazy to grab a baggie, so I'm just using my finger to press down. went ahead and finished everything up off camera because I didn't want this video to get too long. So now I'm going to finish off my mani by rehydrating my cuticles. And I'm using my scales of a Mermaid cuticle oil. And this is the scent Daisy Me Rolling, which is from last year, I believe. So now that the weather's starting to warm up, I'm really getting into my more like spring and summer scents. So I don't know, sometimes I get a little seasonal with my scents. There's some I wear all year round, and there's some I like to wear seasonally. So anyway, here we are with the finished look. As you can see, I got the flower dips to lay pretty flat, no lumps or bumps, not too thick at all. And I really love the way this turned out. So don't get frustrated with floral dips. They are really fun to use, but let me show you this glow. So remember, I topped my mani with Glowful, which is a clear purple glow from Dipp'd, and look at how bright the glow is. It's just a fun little surprise, and you can kind of see the flowers through the glow too, which is kind of neat. So I'm curious to hear your thoughts on how you felt on a video like this. Was it helpful, or is there anything else you're struggling with that you'd like to see a video on? Please let me know down below in the comments. And if you enjoyed this and you did find it helpful, I'd appreciate it if you gave this video a thumbs up. It lets me know to continue creating content like this, and it also helps YouTube recommend me to others, which helps grow my channel. And if you haven't already, please consider subscribing. I upload content every Monday and Thursday at 9:30 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. As always, I appreciate you being here. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.